Well, good morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever time you're listening to this, and welcome back to another Brother Grimm fairy tale. And today our story will be The 12 Brothers. And after reading this beforehand, there's quite a few things that you'll read into it and go, different time. You'll know what I mean when I get to those. But anyway, I will begin. Once upon a time there was a king who had 12 children, all boys. Moreover, he didn't want to have a daughter, and said to his wife, "If you give birth to our 13th child, and it's a girl, I shall have the 12 boys killed. However, if it's a boy, then they'll all remain alive and stay together." The Queen thought of talking him out of this, but the King refused to hear anything more about this topic. "If everything turns out like I said, they must die. I'd rather chop off their heads myself than let a girl be among them." The Queen was sad about this, because she loved her sons with all her heart, and didn't know how she could save them. Finally, she went to the youngest, who was her favourite, and revealed to him what the King had decided. "Dearest child," she said, "go into the forest with your 11 brothers and stay there, and don't come home. One of you should keep watch on a tree and look over here toward the tower. If I give birth to a little son, I'll raise a white flag on top of the tower. However, if it's a little daughter, I'll raise a red flag. If you see that it's red, then you save yourselves. Flee into the wide world, and may our dear Lord protect you. I'll get up every night and pray that you won't freeze in the winter and are able to warm yourselves by a fire, and that when it's hot in the summer, you can rest in a cool forest and sleep." After she gave her blessing to her sons, they went out into the forest, where they frequently looked towards the tower. One of them had to sit on top of a high tree and constantly keep watch. Soon a flag was hoisted, but it wasn't a white one. It was a blood-red flag that foreshadowed their doom. As soon as the brothers caught sight of this, they all became angry and cried out, "Why should we lose our lives because of a girl?" Then they all swore to remain in the middle of the forest and to keep on their guard, and if a maiden were to appear, they would kill her without mercy. Soon after this, they searched for a cave where the forest was the darkest, and that's where they began to live. Every morning 11 of the brothers went off to hunt. One of them had to remain home, cook, and keep house. Whenever they encountered a maiden, she was treated without mercy and lost her life. This is how they lived for many years. In the meantime, their little sister grew up and was the only child left at home. One day there was a large amount of washing to do, and among the clothes there were 12 shirts for boys. "Whose shirts are these?" the princess asked the washerwoman. "They're much too small for my father." It was then that the washerwoman told her that she had once had 12 brothers, but they had mysteriously gone away. Nobody knew where, because the king had wanted to have them all killed, and the 12 shirts belonged to the 12 brothers. The little sister was astonished that she had never heard of her 12 brothers, and during the afternoon, as the clothes were drying and she was sitting in the meadow, she recalled the words of the washerwoman. After giving considerable thought to what she had heard, she stood up, took the 12 shirts, and went into the forest where her brothers were living. The little sister made her way straight to the cave that served as her brother's dwelling. 11 of them were out hunting, and only one of them, who had to cook, was at home. When he caught sight of the maiden, he composed himself and drew his sword. "Kneel down! Your red blood will flow this very second." But the maiden pleaded, "Oh, don't, sir, let me live. I'll stay with you and serve you honestly. I'll cook and keep house." She spoke those words to the youngest brother, and he took pity on her because of her beauty, and spared her life. Later, when his 11 brothers returned home and were astonished to find a maiden alive in their cave, he said to them, "Dear brothers, this girl came to our cave, and when I wanted to cut her to pieces, she pleaded for her life so much and said that she would serve us faithfully and keep house, that I spared her life." The others thought that this would be a great benefit to them, because now all 12 of them could go hunting, and they were satisfied with this arrangement. When the maiden showed them the 12 shirts, and told them that she was their sister, indeed they were all very happy about this, and were glad that they hadn't killed her at all. Now the little sister took over all the household chores, and when the brothers went out hunting, she gathered wood and herbs, kept the fire going, made up the beds nice, white and clean, and did everything with zeal and without getting tired. One day, when she was finished with all her work, she took a walk in the woods, and came to a place where there were 12 large, beautiful white lilies. Since they pleased her so much, she plucked all 12 of them. No sooner did she do this than an old woman stood before her. "Oh, my daughter," she said, "why didn't you let the 12 budding flowers just stand there, pet? They're your 12 brothers. Now they've been changed into ravens and lost forever." The little sister began to weep and said, "Oh, isn't there anything that we can do to save them?" "No, pet. There isn't any way in the world except one that's so difficult you won't be able to rescue them. You must spend the next 12 years without speaking. If you say a single word, even if there's only 1 hour left, everything will be in vain, and your brothers will die that very moment." Well, the little sister responded by climbing a tall tree in the forest where she took her place. She wanted to sit there 12 years without saying a word to free her brothers. But it so happened that a king was out riding and hunting in the forest, and as he rode by the tree, his dog stood still and barked. So the king stopped and looked up, and was very amazed by the princess's beauty. He called to her, and asked her whether she wanted to become his wife. However, she did remain silent. And then she only nodded, with a bit of her head. So the king himself dismounted, helped her down from the tree, and lifted her up before him onto his horse. Then he brought her home to his castle. Meanwhile, the princess did not utter one word, and the king thought she was mute. They would have lived happily with one another if it hadn't been for the king's mother, who began to slander the young queen in front of her son. "She's a common beggar that you've dug up from nowhere, and she's doing the most disgraceful things behind your back." Since the young queen couldn't defend herself, the king was led astray, and finally believed what his mother said. So he sentenced his wife to death, and an enormous fire was built in the courtyard, where she was to be burnt to death. Soon the queen was standing in the flames that grazed the fringes of her dress. 1 minute was left before the 12 years of her silence could be completed. There was a noise in the air, and the 12 ravens swooped down into the courtyard, and as soon as they touched the ground, they became the 12 handsome princes, who instantly put out the fire and then led their sister to safety. Then she spoke once again, and told the king how everything had happened, and how she had to save her 12 brothers. Indeed, they were all pleased that everything turned out so well. Now they had to decide what they should do with the evil mother-in-law. Well, they stuck her into a barrel full of boiling oil and poisonous snakes, and she died a ghastly death. Grim way to end it, isn't it? You could say it's Brothers Grimm. Or I was going to make a Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids reference, but yeah, I think I won't. Yeah, that one has got some connotations to it, I will admit, but it's a nice one. It's about, I think this kind of got adapted into some other stories about, I think the Six Swans was kind of a similar thing. I think that was probably a mother, I think, not the sister, but we'll get to that one eventually. So, yes, thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.